just the sounds of nature and everything. I just am in awe, just sitting here. I'm just so relaxed and contemplative in a really good way. But hey everyone, how are you doing today? And welcome to Pause 8, which is about the space between things. So I'm here on the island of Koh Phangan in Thailand. It's in the Bay of Bengal, and this island is special because it's actually built on rose quartz crystal. They talk about the whole island is just based on this massive bed of rose quartz crystal, and the energy and everything is just amazing. I mean, I'm just like, zen is not even a word for how I'm feeling right now. So in our pauses, we've been working through like different aspects of time, basically, because pause is an element. It's an increment of time, right? And it's how we're seeing our time and space relationships to our lives. And last week we were dealing with the weight of unfinished things, and that's about a progression of time, things we put into projects, and then they sit there and then they fester, and then we start feeling bad because we should finish them and we don't want to finish them. So I really enjoyed reading you guys' comments last week, because yeah, we're definitely all in the same tribe here, because I could tell you guys all were dealing with the same exact thing that I deal with, and it what brought me to thinking about unfinished things differently, So so this week, this idea about the space between things, what had me thinking about that is that I was thinking about the pauses. And so, we have an activity scheduled, and then we have another activity scheduled, or we have one thing that we're doing in our daily schedule, like fixing dinner, and then there may be another thing that happens after the fixing the dinner, like even just something as simple as a movie's getting ready to come on that you want to do, where there's a pause in between there, right? Or on our art projects, we may go from doing our journaling to maybe doing a painting to maybe doing some jelly printing, and then back, and then using those things, and this sort of mixed media approach. Well, there's all these spaces in between our activities, and we're starting to become more sensitive to those spaces. So we're seeing them in terms of being reminders, like mantras that we'll tell ourselves, like lift our heart, or things we want to remember in that week about maybe going and doing some clearing and cleaning out. And so we've been using those pauses to think about, or to keep ourselves reminded of the things that we want to do, or the things that we want to be focused on. And so, as opposed to having some particular point in the day that we designate as, okay, I'm going to think about this thing, or I'm going to do this activity, we're learning that all of these activities and all the things in between are where we gain all this time, right? And it doesn't become about reminding ourselves to do something, but the pauses become integrated into our lives, that we just naturally, start doing these things. So when I got to thinking about that, then I thought about, when we think about the space between things, when we're not using that space, as we're now learning to do with our pauses, we think of that as empty. It's like empty space. It's downtime. We'll say that it's downtime, or it's, it's a void, or, I'm not doing anything right now. But what occurred to me is that space is really full, for us to start thinking about those moments and those seconds in between our activities are actually full. They're actually, they're not a void, and I wanted to hone in on this, because I think we're already learning that. I think we're already discovering that on this journey, that wow, all this time that, before I'm sort of making myself become aware of pauses, I would have thought of it as just, like empty time or whatever. And so to be able to think of this differently, there's a lot that I'm able to do with this time. So there is a Japanese term called ma, and I'm going to read it here. But the Japanese concept of ma teaches us that space is not empty, it's alive. It is the pauses between things, the breath between words, the silence in music, the openness in design. So ma is what allows meaning to emerge. I love that. It's what allows the meaning to emerge, because it really isn't empty. It's full of the opportunity for us to further consider everything that we're doing. And so it's like they were talking about in music, it's the thing that, like when a lot of times when the band or the orchestra goes quiet, that's a powerful moment. It's not really silence. It's a place where, it makes us appreciate what we just heard. And so, Ma is about it's, without it, everything would be decluttered, rushed, and overwhelming. So I've been reflecting on this deeply. I wrote this, and in my journal, I created art around the glyph for Ma. As I worked, I realized how often I resist space in my own life. How often I rush to feel the quiet moments instead of letting them settle. But Ma invites us to do something different, to honor the space between things and recognize its purpose. So, and this is, the symbol for emptiness, or for negative space, basically, for the void. And think of like space, think of about the planet, think of the womb being like an empty space, a negative space, but from that space things are created. So Ma, nature, the creatrix, creativity, those all come from this empty space, this void. I think I'm just going to now I really want to put some of my scripting underneath it, and maybe white here, black here, put this down, get the offset, but no, that's not me allowing empty space. And right now I'm finding it difficult just to say, nope, I'm just going to put this down. And because I'm finding it difficult is the reason why I'm going to challenge myself to put this down and create this space. So when I really thought about that, it's like, like in theater, they call it the pregnant pause. And it's that moment when a line has been spoken, and the actor will stop and allow that moment to be silent, so that the audience really gets what was just stated, right? And really gives it the drama, that dramatic effect that allows one to really experience what is being shared. So then we think about the pause, or that emptiness, or that silence, as absolutely necessary and fundamental. And because of that, it is in fact, it's serving a purpose, right? So without the silence, without the pregnant pauses, we wouldn't experience what just happened the same way. So I feel that it's an opportunity for us to look at all these moments, all these pauses, as being full of an opportunity. So, for instance, let's say we just finished fixing dinner, and we've just finished eating this amazing meal we just fixed. And then we have some space there because, let's say, the movie that we want to watch won't start for another half an hour. So maybe, as opposed to running from place to place and trying to do a whole lot of other stuff, that time period, that pause, becomes an opportunity for us to really sit down and enjoy that meal that we just had. Really thinking about it, really, dropping down into the body, and just, feeling how nourishment is moving through the body, feeling how the endorphins are rushing, how happy we are about what we just made and created and ate, maybe it's 10 minutes. Maybe it's 5 minutes, but I think a purposeful pausing to look at the spaces between what you just fixed and ate, settling down and really just allowing yourself to savor it and just think about all the spices, and maybe even think about what you might do differently next time, what you might add, what you might take away. Just really developing the experience that you just had. And then what that does too, so when it's time to go look at that movie or that your favorite network program, you enter that in a different space, because you enter that in a space of already have reflecting on, the meal that you had, and then how that supports. Now you can sit down, your belly is full, you've enjoyed that, and it prepares you, for your next experience. And I think that that's living consciously. That's us being conscious of all this time in between, that generally we're just from pillar to post. I know I am. I can just go from one thing to the next, and I can have downtime in between, but as opposed to me using that downtime to really support what I'm already doing or where I am, I might just be thinking about the next thing I have to do, and like just over planning. Like I don't really need to even be thinking about it because it's already set up. I know what I'm going to do, or I'm thinking about something 3 days from now. I got this little space of time. Let me start working on. I am famous for that. Hands up on that. And I know one thing, since I've been here on the island and I've really just been resetting, there is definitely a thing called island time. It is actually a real phenomenon, because I have just slowed down and I've just given myself more space to think about things, to not think about stuff, to maybe do something or not do something. There's been an amazing schedule of yoga. There's at least 3 sessions of yoga a day, a couple meditation sessions, different kind of breath work sessions, different kind of sort of creative dance sessions. The schedule is booked, and I would normally, before I even started these pauses, I would normally say, okay, I'm gonna do yoga in the morning, and then I'm going to do the meditation, then I'll have lunch, and then I'll have a little time to sit down and do this, and then I'll do the afternoon yoga. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. All right, and then I'll do dinner. Well, there's a midnight yoga. All right, I'm gonna do that. Oh, there's a steam room. Let me jump in the steam room in between. The massage center. Let me book a massage. That's me. Both hands up. But I came into this deciding that I was going to ask myself one thing, and this is probably a good pause too. I might end up making this one a pause for us, because I thought, if I just ask myself with every decision I'm getting ready to make, does it feel like I will rest or digest with that? And if the answer was no, then I didn't do it. And rest and digest is what the parasympathetic system does. And my whole goal this month of March was to really just spend time dropping down into my parasympathetic system and beginning to really understand what that really feels like. What does it feel like to not be in my sympathetic system, which is the flight and the fight and flight one. And though we're not, fighting maybe, sometimes we are. Sometimes something comes up where, somebody got angry with us. We have something going on and we find ourselves responding to that. Or flight means we're always going from point to point to point. And I think the pauses are the thing that helps us settle down from that process that we're in, when we're constantly just dealing with, being in movement from point to point to point to point. And that's flight. That's literally us moving from here to get to here, to get to there, and I think I'm in my sympathetic system way more than I thought I was. I would have said, oh, I'm in my parasympathetic. No. After this time in Thailand, I'm realizing how less I am in my my parasympathetic system. So I decided that I would use the language of the parasympathetic system to trigger it. So if it's about resting and digesting, then I'm going to ask myself that. And the body knows. Just like when we say lift our heart, the body knows everything to do. It knows the lift, it smiles, it makes us happy, it sends endorphins flowing all around the place. So I figure maybe it's the same thing with rest and digest. I don't know. But I said, let me try it. And I found that it was definitely very, very helpful, because I may have done a morning yoga, and then I remember there was this woman's dance one that I really, 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 really wanted to do. So I had done the morning yoga, had had a nice breakfast, and was just sitting there kind of chilling. And then the time came up for me to go there, and I started feeling a little anxiety. I don't know why, because I love dance. And I asked myself, will I be in rest and digest? And then it was like, I got the answer, no. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to do it. And that was an experience that I had marked on the calendar way before I even came here. Oh, I want to do that, you know. So, but I followed that, and I feel like I made the right decision. I feel like I really honored myself, and I honored the larger mission that I'm about, which is resetting my parasympathetic system, really being in a reset. And so asking myself if I was going to rest or digest or really helped me to make decisions. So I say that because it caused me to fall into a place of deeper relaxation, and I started noticing more of the pauses. You know, I got a lot of art done. I've just been painting, which just to have that freedom to just move from one moment to another and really connecting them. So I feel like I've had one gigantic pause. You know, I think one of you even said the big pause, you know, the island pause. But it's been one large pause, and it's amazing because it seems like when you drop down into the parasympathetic system, then there's the spaces between activities doesn't seem to be as perceptible as it is when I'm in the sympathetic system. That's something else I've noted. I'd be curious for you guys to comment on that as well. For those of you who are really good at being in your parasympathetic system, or if you started to move into it as a result of pauses, have you noticed that it doesn't seem like it's as many gaps between what we're doing, or maybe they're becoming more refined, and so it causes us to hone in and connect more even with the smaller moments that are our pauses now. But yeah, so Ma. So I wrote the Japanese symbol of Ma in my journal this week. I painted it with the sumi, and it was just two symbols that I chose the one that was the two symbols. You can have the two symbols, you can have the one with the gate, it could be a third symbol. You know, there's a lot of different pictograms or variations of the pictograms for certain concepts in the Japanese culture. But I really had to hold myself back from not filling it up. No, because I wanted to put something here, and I wanted to, maybe I'll put a little something there. Maybe I'll do some scripting. And I'm like, no, because that's the space. That's the space between things. So what makes the characters really pop out is the fact that I left a lot of space around it. You know, like I really resisted the urge to do more to that page. And it really was a struggle for me because I really wanted to do more. So yeah, the space between things. So that's something else to keep on thinking about our art when we think about editing. You know, we're editing our art. If making more space makes what we're saying even more dramatic, or, you know, like it gets it across better. And I think that we can even take it back to the weight of unfinished things. You know, the more we eliminated that stuff, we just created more space. And in creating more space, we found more of maybe the things we wanted to do, or maybe we found more space, physical space, to do the things that we want to do on or at, right? So it's like this idea of eliminating, creating space, and resisting filling space up with things that don't really speak to what we're expressing, but maybe out of habit, we want to put that little, that little butterfly that we always use, or put that little scripting that we always use, or just put that little dot of color that we always use. And maybe we get to not do that because we need a little more space in that particular piece that we're doing, or at least experiment with not doing it, and just see, maybe it'll make the piece better, maybe it won't, but just allowing ourselves just to do it, to see what happens. It can always be added. It's a lot harder to take things away, right? So if you live with it for a few days or for a few weeks and you're like, no, I need to put that butterfly and then do it. But, giving ourselves a chance to edit, to not just rush into the finish, but hang back a little bit and let's edit. Create a little more space there. Because in that space, it's pregnant with meaning. There's so much meaning there. And if we just sit with it and listen to it and allow it to speak to us, then we can capture, this is what, I need to hear. This is what's being shared with me. This is what I get to incorporate in what I'm doing. So yeah, the space between things. Ma. So really think about Ma. And I think like Ma, it's so appropriate because it's the mother, it's nurturing, it's creative. It's all the things that we are yearning for right now in our lives. And so, yeah, let Ma teach us a few things with the pregnant pauses, the space between things that we may have once thought was just silence or empty, are really teeming with so much energy, creativity, and clarity. So anyway, alrighty. So that's pause 8. And love you guys. And I'm enjoying this journey of pauses. I'm so glad you guys are as well. I read all of the comments, and it's so nice to hear the like-mindedness of the journey that we're on. So, yeah. All right. Take care. Love you. And until next week, yeah. Stay in that space of watching the space between things, and, just assign maybe 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes to a block of time that you have between one thing and going to the next, and use it to be reflective of what you've just done, and maybe you're reflecting forward, but in a rest and digest, in a place where you're sitting down and maybe doing more listening than thinking, allowing random thoughts just to pop into the mind, because that's the voice of our muse. That's the voice of our higher self. That's the voice of God, however we look at that, and see what we hear. So, all right, take care. Love you guys. Mwah. I will see you again next week.